Hello and welcome to the Tillage Edge with me, Shay Phelan. This is your regular update for all your tillage news and advice. Over the last couple of months, we have seen significant increases in fertiliser prices, which has led to a renewed interest in the use of organic manures on tillage farms. So I spoke to Mark Plunkett, our soil specialist, about using organic manures on tillage farms. But first I asked Mark about the reasons for the increases that we've seen in some of the common fertiliser products over the last couple of months.
Nitrogen, if you take can, is trading somewhere in the region of 320 to 340 per tonne, which is exceptionally high for this time of the year. Compounds on as well are up significantly on previous years, and again, if you take the likes of 10-10-20, it's trading somewhere in the ballpark of 520 to 540. So as I say, prices, fertilizer prices have increased significantly in 2021 and remain high, and indications are, Shay, that they're going to be high in 2022.
And Mark, how does that compare, say, to what prices we've seen, say, this year and previous years?
Yeah, it's a good question, but I suppose it depends when you bought your nitrogen. If did you buy your nitrogen pre-Christmas, say, or did you buy it after Christmas? But depending, we're looking somewhere in the region, Shay, of anywhere from 50 to 100 euros per tonne. That's where we are in terms of price increases, like.
Yeah, and I suppose, Mark, the real question, I suppose, a lot of people are probably asking is, what I know energy prices are rising, but what's causing these prices?
I suppose there's a number of things, Shay, there, and it's very much down to a supply-demand situation, and it's very much down to urea on the world market. And I suppose an interesting point to note, Shay, is that the world market of fertilizer continues to grow at about 4% per year. And there's two big players there that have come into the marketplaces, China and India, and they have imported a lot more urea in 2021 compared to previous years, and in effect this has reduced the supply of fertilizer in the EU market.
In terms of kind of some of the straits, I mean, is there any impact, say, the likes of potash or DAP or any of those?
Yeah, again, like we're seeing diammonium phosphate, DAP, which is the main ingredient in the likes of 10-10-20, 18-6-12. It has doubled in price. It's gone to $750 per tonne. It hasn't hit the highs of 2008 or 2009, where it went to $1,000 per tonne. I'm told. There's also issues or problems in terms of potash supply in the marketplace as well. And again, it's very much around Ukraine and Russia. Again, the supplies are not the same. And again, this is putting pressure on the supplies in Europe. And even we have I'm told the likes of America is coming into Europe to buy potash. And again, the result of that is that potash has doubled in price. And again, that's resulting in higher fertilizer prices.
Yeah, and when it comes to, say, like nitrogen, Mark, gas is normally one of the key factors in the price of nitrogen. Has that had an impact this year?
Yeah, 100%, Shay. Yeah, gas is one of the I suppose the main raw ingredient when it comes to the production of nitrogen. And again, I'm told that the price of gas has rocketed. And again, that's driving the price of nitrogen as well. It's making it more expensive for us, like.
Yeah, so all combined probably makes the likes of organic manures more attractive to fellas, Mark. So I suppose, and that's kind of really what we want to talk about today. So I suppose, what at the current prices, what sort of value would you put, say, per tonne or per 1,000 gallons of, say, like a cattle slurry or pig slurry or farm manure, poultry manure, some of those things?
Well, if you take the price increases in the spring of 2021, where fertilizer increased by up to 50 euros per tonne. If you take 1,000 gallons of cattle slurry, Shay, we put a fertilizer value on it, say in terms of NP and K, it's something like a 6532 in terms of NP and K, available NP and K, and it's worth about 23 euros per 1,000 gallons.
Right. Okay.
If you take pig slurry, again, I suppose it's quite available out there. Again, pig slurry, if you take a 19,720 in terms of available NP and K, it's valued at about 27 euros per 1,000 gallons. And look, they are worth more now because fertilizer prices, those values will increase in 22 due to the increases in
And does that I presume, Mark, that's just a nutrient value of those organic manures? It's not the application or transport costs are not included in those, are they?
No, that's very much based on the NPK. Like we can work out, the value of a kilo of NP or K in terms of fertilizer, and then once we know what's in the organic manure, we can put a value on it per ton or per 1,000 gallons.
And in terms of, I suppose, the true value of it, I mean, in terms of getting those products out onto farms, I mean, there are probably a few issues that people need to be aware of in terms of transport, in terms of spreading charge, all that sort of thing. What sort of costs can lads incur by, say, transport, or is there kind of a limit on how far these things should be transported?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose it depends on the situation. In some situations, Shay, the transport and spreading is a single charge. Like if you say, take a tillage farmer who links up with a local piggery, or maybe a dairy farmer, for example, generally they're within a close proximity. And again, spreading and transport will be a single charge. While if you take like the poultry manure or mushroom compost, in a lot of situations there is a transport cost because you'll have to get the manures a distance to the farms. I suppose, if we take an example, if we take pig slurry, for example, like and like we're saying it's worth, say, 27 euros or even say 30 euros per 1,000 gallons. And if you take our spreading charge, then say it's costing, say for a band spreader or a trailing shoe, say it's costing 75 euros per hour, say for a 3,000 gallon tanker. So if you have a 3,000 gallon tanker at 30 euros per 1,000 gallons, your tanker or load of slurry then is worth 90 euros. So if you're paying 75 euros an hour and you're spreading a load per hour, you know what I mean? It's covering the cost, Shay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
so it's just something people need to have in the back of their minds when they are looking to bring in slurries. There is a bit of logistics that have to be, and the cost of that logistics as well, isn't there?
There is, and I think the nutrient value is very, very important. Like, you know what I mean? It'd be important to get it tested, see exactly what's in it, and then how far can it travel. Like if you take like the poultry manure, it'll travel a long distance because it tends to be a dried product.
Okay. Yeah.
Take layer manure, it's coming out of a modern layer unit now. It's a dried product. It's very high in NP and K, and it will go a distance because it's nutrient dense. Compared to like the pig slurry, say it's 4% dry matter, it contains 96% water, so it will not travel as far.
Yes, you're transporting a lot of water in actual fact.
Yeah, so it's very important to look at the type of manure, what's in it in terms of NP and K, and then do your maths then in terms of how far can it travel.
Yeah, and I suppose, Mark, autumn time is a time when a lot of tillage farmers tend to take in organic manures, and there's a bit of paperwork that needs to be done. What sort of cross compliance issues is involved, or what do they need to look out for?
Well, I suppose it's firstly, it's very much back to your fertilizer plan to see, how much can you take in based on your crop types and your crop nutrient requirements. Then updating your fertilizer plan to, allocate the different types of organic manure to the different fields at the appropriate application rates. And also then there will be completing the likes of the record tree in terms of the movement of organic manures between the supplier of the organic manure and the recipient of the organic manure. So there is a little bit of paperwork there to be completed, and very importantly to update your fertilizer plan to make the adjustments to your chemical, your nitrogen and phosphorus allowances on the farm.
Yeah, and I suppose, Mark, that needs to be done before any load arrives on the farm first, so that you know actually what you can physically bring in or what you're allowed to bring.
Absolutely. It's very, very important to see how many tons can I bring in, you know what I mean, in any 1 year, and then make the adjustments, the appropriate adjustments on all fronts, from the fields that are going to get it at the different application rates, and then obviously reducing your 10-10-20 or your 18-6-12 or the level of chemical nitrogen that comes in on the farm. So it's very, very important from an environmental point of view, but also then in terms of a cost saving, that you're actually making the cost saving, you know what I mean, in terms of bringing in the organic manure.
Bringing in the manures is right. So I suppose moving on then, Mark, in terms of applying it, we're seeing a lot of new technology out there about applying, say, like slurry at the moment, and some guys are getting used to new ways of spreading it. Is there an ideal way of applying, say, like slurries, or what would you recommend at the moment to guys?
Well, I suppose, as you've said there, Shay, again, the likes of the band spreaders, the trailing shoes, they are now more available than they have ever been before here in Ireland. So again, by using a band spreader or a trailing shoe, you will reduce the loss of nitrogen at the time of application. I suppose the second thing then, Shay, very, very important, is rapid incorporation. So we would encourage to plough in or incorporate that, especially the high end organic manures like your pig slurry, your poultry manures, within 3 to 6 hours. And the main reason for that is to reduce the loss of ammonia, and you're trapping more of the nitrogen in the soil for the crop to take up. Therefore, you're reducing the level of chemical nitrogen that you're bringing onto the farm. I'd also encourage you to get a number of samples tested so you know exactly what's in the organic manure. Like if we go down to our merchant to buy some fertiliser, we know what's on the bag. It's 10, 10, 20 or 18, 6, 12. So again, the same goes for the slurry. And so you can make the appropriate adjustments in terms of application rates. I suppose another important thing is to apply it as close as possible to crop requirement. So again, you're putting it out at a time at an appropriate rate that you're going to supply, this a sufficient level of NP and K to get the crop up and running in the springtime. Do you know what I mean? That you're matching the application of those nutrients to crop demand, very much like as you would spread a bag fertilizer. I suppose you have to think that way now in terms of maximizing or using the manures as efficiently as possible. Another factor to consider as well is that we should target the organic manures to the low index fields. Again, back to the fertilizer plan, your index ones, index twos, those fields have I suppose, the biggest demand for P and K, and it's a great way of building fertility in those fields as well. And also very, very important as well, Shay, is even application, whether it's a liquid manure or a solid manure. Very, very important to apply it at an even application rate, and then as even as possible across the spread width. And again, that's something that I like about the new technology in terms of the band spreader or the trailing shoes, that you're getting a very even distribution of the nutrients across the spread width.
Yeah, it's very easy to see the patterns across the fields when you're using some of the low emission slurry spreaders and things like that, isn't it?
Well, it just reduces possible problems in
Yeah.
terms of lodging or such. But again, it's making sure the slurry is well agitated, and again that it's spread, as evenly as possible across the field. But again, the technology is now there to that's very achievable on farm, with the new technology.
Yeah, and Mark, I suppose I'm thinking at the moment about, say, typically you would see a lot of manures, say, likes of poultry manures and that coming onto farm at this time of the year. How critical or how soon after application should those manures be incorporated?
Again, for the likes of the poultry manures, in terms of the broiler manure, again, very important to incorporate as soon as possible, plough in as soon as possible. And again, it's very much down to reduce the risk of botulism spread. But even for the likes of your pig slurry, again, any of the high end organic manures, poultry, pig manure, they need to be incorporated as soon as possible. And again, you're very much reducing the loss of nitrogen. Like if they sit in the surface, the nitrogen is lost as ammonia to the air. That's the eggy smell, or that smell you get after the application.
Yeah,
So again,
yeah.
incorporating those manures as soon as possible, very, very important.
And in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, Mark, and I suppose it's been a lot in the media over the last couple of weeks. How important is it from that point of view in terms of incorporating your organic manures to reduce down greenhouse gas emissions?
Again, I suppose it's on two fronts, Shay. Again, by incorporating the manures as soon as possible, you're reducing loss of ammonia
Yeah.
to the atmosphere, and also the more nitrogen we recover from the organic manure, the less chemical nitrogen that we have to use. And I suppose if I give you the example, Shay, if you take somebody putting out 2,000 gallons of pig slurry that's incorporated, we're recovering about 50% of the nitrogen in that slurry. If you take a crop of spring barley, so we can reduce the crop's nitrogen requirement then by 38 units per acre.
Right.
That's approximately 30% of the crop's chemical nitrogen requirement.
Okay. Yeah.
However, if we don't incorporate and say we leave them on the surface, we only recover about 20 or 25% of the nitrogen from the pig slurry. So then we're only supplying, say, 15 to maybe 20 units from the pig slurry. So that means we have more chemical nitrogen to apply. And you know what I mean? The more nitrogen that we can retain from the organic manures, we're reducing, greenhouse gas emissions, and ammonia emissions.
So as you say, Mark, we're increasing the cost to the farmer because they're actually recovering less of the nitrogen that's available to the crop.
Yeah, in the example I gave you, like we can recover about 40 units of nitrogen by rapid incorporation, where if we don't incorporate it rapidly, we're only recovering 20 units of the nitrogen. Like, so you're losing
that's
half of the nitrogen
real cost as
to
well.
the atmosphere.
In terms of leaching them, Mark, and leaching is often a problem on tillage soils. What's the risk on heavy versus light soils, and how much nitrogen can be lost from these soils, I suppose?
Yeah, the big risk is on the lighter soils, Shay. That's where the nitrogen, the main pathway of loss on light soils is through leaching as it moves down through the profile. If we get the wrong weather conditions after application, on heavy soils the risk is not as high. Sorry, we tend to get more runoff on the heavy soils. But I think to reduce nitrogen loss, I think is very much down to, as I said before, matching nitrogen supply with nitrogen demand. And it's very much, the time of the year, what is the crop's nitrogen demand or nutrient demand at that time of the year, and also the weather around the application, and also soil conditions. And I think also forecast as well. If the weather is forecast to be poor in the next 2 or 3 days, again, best hold off and apply the organic manure or the fertilizer after the weather event or the heavy rainfall.
Yeah, which is a kind of often the opposite of what some farmers do, is they apply before the weather breaks because they're afraid of damaging soil and that. But there, as you said, there's an increased risk of runoff then if they're applying organic manures before heavy rain events.
There is, like, ideally you want, say, 48 hours, of good weather after application. But if you're going spreading and you're getting, a lot of rain within 48 hours of application, if you're on a very light soil, depending on the amount of rain you get, that nutrient, that nitrogen can be washed down through the profile, washed out a rooting zone where the crop's going to pick it up. And on a heavy soil, then you can get a runoff if the soil is very wet and you get more rain on top. The nutrient can actually run off, and again, it's a loss of nutrients, and again, they find their way into water courses, etc.
Yeah, and just wondering then, Mark, on top of that, how much capacity have crops to retain the organic matter or the nitrogen in the organic matter? Is there differences between crops, or differences between spring and winter crops?
Well, if you take a winter versus a spring crop, the winter crop has a bigger nitrogen demand compared to take a winter wheat versus spring barley. Those two crops have different nitrogen demands. But it's very much, I suppose, it's down to timing. In terms of the type of organic manure, if you take like the farmyard manure, there's about 30% of the nitrogen available, while pig slurry or poultry manure, there's 50% of the nitrogen available at the time of application. I suppose the other thing that we don't think about as well is that we're actually adding, say, like the farmyard manure is very good for adding to the soil organic nitrogen pool compared to pig slurry. Like, there's very little organic matter in pig slurry, but it has a lot of nitrogen readily available at the time of application. So look, I say crops, they'll recover anywhere from 30 to 50% of the nitrogen is readily available at the time of application. And then depending on, I suppose, how dry, like your farmyard manure will give a lot more organic matter, and you'll build soil organic matter over time, which will, I suppose, feed the soil. Or if you continually applied, say, pig slurry or poultry manure, like, over time you would build up the soil's nitrogen reserves, so the soil would be supplying more of the nitrogen to the crop, therefore would reduce your overall chemical nitrogen requirement during the growing season.
And I suppose, Mark, just one other question I was going to ask you about retaining nitrogen in crops is you always recommend, or I've often heard you saying before about recommending high nitrogen organic manures in front of the likes of oilseed rape versus, say, winter cereals. And what's the reason for that?
Oilseed rape, I suppose, has a bigger ability to take up nitrogen, over the autumn and into the winter period. It could take up, 60, 70, 80 kilos of nitrogen.
Right.
You can actually produce a lot of biomass, or, you could have in terms of the green leaf area index, you could have maybe up to maybe 1.5 or 2, or maybe even higher for some oilseed rape crops. So oilseed rape is quite a good crop. It's a good scavenger or a good recoverer of nitrogen because it grows well over the winter period. While a crop of winter cereal, Shay, only requires about 15 or 20 kilos of nitrogen over the winter period in terms of establishment, and generally the soil will supply that. And I suppose the other one as well, ideally, like, you know, other than oilseed rape, like oilseed rape has an ability to utilize like the pig slurry or say poultry manures. But really, I suppose the low inorganic manures are probably more suitable where we are applying organic manures in the autumn, the likes of your farmyard manures or your mushroom composts or even your cattle slurry, and then obviously adjust the application rate. But yes, oilseed rape has a very good ability to take up nitrogen over the winter period, and then you can make the adjustment to follow in spring. It can reduce your overall crop end requirement in that type of crop.
Well, just finally then, is there a couple of key tips that you would give farmers for who are thinking of applying organic manures this autumn?
I suppose the first one, Shay, is I suppose get to know what's in the manure. So get it tested, figure out what's its NP and K value. Very important to adjust the application rate based on crop demand. From a spreading point of view, I'd encourage that, you know, like the slurries, they're well agitated, spread them as evenly as possible, and possibly at a lower rate, maybe 1,500 to 2,000 gallons, say for like your pig or your cattle slurry. Also the use of the new technology in the low emission slurry spreading equipment, and incorporate as rapidly as possible. And I suppose finally, very important to reduce your chemical fertilizer requirement based on your fertilizer plan to make the financial savings.
That's great, Mark. There's some fabulous advice and tips in that. So listen, Mark, thanks for your time. There's some great information there over the last couple of minutes. So thanks for taking the time to come and join us today.
Thanks, Shay. Super. Thank you.
So that's it for the Tillage Edge for this week. And my sincere thanks to Mark Plunkett for joining me today. Remember to keep farm safety on the agenda, especially as children are still on holidays and are potentially closer to machinery operations than may be desirable. It's a busy time on tillage farms, and tiredness following long working days can often allow slippages in terms of safety awareness, potentially resulting in mistakes and accidents. So just be aware of your safety on the farm and those around you as well. So finally, don't forget, if you like this podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague. And as always, rate, review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, log on to teagasc.ie. I'm Shay Phelan. Thanks for listening. And Michael Hennessy will be back next week with more tillage news and advice.